Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Spence Adams. Thank you so much for coming to my session today. I'm joining you from Olin College of Engineering, where I've been a professor of mathematics and engineering for 22 years. I'm really happy to be here to share some time with you. And I also wanted to let you know that I've prepared some extra materials for you in the resource space on this website. Today, we're going to be discussing how to improve engagement and learning through ideas such as universal design, theories on motivation, and hands-on engineering activities. The major themes that we're going to talk about today are some connections between an engineering college, namely Olin College, and K-12 classrooms. We'll talk about some tools from Universal Design for Learning to help reach more students in our classrooms. We will learn a bit about theories of motivation as a way to keep more students engaged, which is really a precursor to learning. And throughout, I'll be using examples of hands-on activities that can be used in any classroom at any age to reinforce math concepts and also build 21st century skills such as oral communication and teamwork. Throughout the presentation, feel free to put questions in the chat, and then at the end, we'll also have a lively Q&A and discussion. I wanted to let you know before we jump in that I chose these topics with the hope that some of these ideas and tools can help us resolve some of the tensions we might be feeling as educators, where on the one hand, we're still swimming against the tide of the pandemic. We have too little time in class, we have too little prep time, we have a lot of pressure to hit our math standards. While on the other hand, more than ever, our students need nurturing, they need extra help with their mathematics, and they also need time to help relearn how to work together and connect with their peers and with their teachers. So I'm really hopeful that some of the tools that we'll discuss today can help us resolve some of these tensions that we might be feeling. So I think all of us in this room today, we're here because we care about math education. We sort of have this common mission from kindergarten through college and beyond to increase interest and confidence and a sense of belonging in mathematics and in STEM in general among all students. A lot of us here today are mathematicians, so we love math, we want our students to love math, but it's deeper than that. I really view this as a social justice issue. We need to diversify who has access to that socioeconomic mobility that can be provided by STEM careers. So we're really invested here today to try to think about how we can reach all students and really get all students prepared for the future. Because we have this common mission, whether we're teaching fourth graders or high schoolers or college students, I think that that common mission does require some joint efforts. So today I'm going to share a little bit about a new course that I've developed over the last couple of years, where college students, specifically engineering majors, are designing and developing and deploying STEM workshops with partner learners in elementary and middle school. In some cases, they're working in math classrooms or in after-school programs. These workshops that my students have developed use research-backed pedagogies to reinforce math concepts and also specifically to practice teamwork and communication and social skills, and while most importantly, developing STEM identity in all students. One of the major research-backed pedagogies or teaching methodologies that we use is Universal Design for Learning. So universal design actually grew out of architecture when activists were working to change building codes to make buildings and other spaces more accessible to a wider range of people. This idea then broadened into education. The idea with Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is to provide a framework for your lessons, your classroom activities, your homework, your assessments, to really center those around accessibility and inclusion. The idea is that instead of teaching in a narrow way and providing an accommodation for those who receive formal support, we can provide a more broadly accessible learning experience for all students, regardless of whether they have a diagnosis or not. UDL can actually support learning differences in more equitable ways because all students are receiving these options of how to receive information and learn rather than only receiving it in one way unless you have a formal accommodation. UDL is also intimately tied to our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts because the whole point with UDL is to create a classroom that is welcoming and more accessible to all students. I want to mention that UDL cannot replace and should not replace IEPs or 504 plans. However, the idea is that if teachers teach in more accessible ways, it can obviate the need for certain accommodations. For example, if a teacher does not give time tests, there would not be a need for the very common accommodation for time and a half on tests. If a classroom provides a range of seating options, including rugs for floor work, bean bags, traditional chairs, and desks, this is going to reduce the need for seating accommodations, and it also can reduce the stigma and questions, especially younger kids can ask about why somebody gets a bean bag and someone else has to sit in a hard chair. There are some other ideas behind UDL that I really like because they are hardly any time at all for the teachers and hardly any expense. And one of them is printing your math worksheets with large print. This is going to reduce the stigma for students who might need large print for vision reasons. And that large print has been shown more and more, it's been shown recently to help students who have diagnosed or undiagnosed ADD, ADHD, and dyslexia. So by providing large print math worksheets or worksheets in writing in any subject, it can really broaden access for many students. Similarly, a teacher using a microphone can benefit students who are hard of hearing while also benefiting a wider range of students who might need extra focus to tune out distractions and background noises. So there are many ideas within UDL that can make an education more accessible to more students. And so what is this magic UDL? It sounds almost like magic. So I want to dive in and start talking about what is universal design for learning. This is a graphic that I made to simplify the core tenets of UDL as presented by the Center for Applied Special Technology, or CAST. CAST was really the leader in getting UDL off the ground, and we'll be using a lot of CAST frameworks. This representation here also used some information from academic ableism. In the first column, this green column, CAST speaks about multiple means of engagement. This is all about why students learn. The idea here is that we want to seek multiple ways to recruit interests and motivations of all students. That middle purple column, CAST speaks about multiple means of representation. This is all about how teachers teach. The idea of UDL is to give learners multiple ways of acquiring information and knowledge. That final blue column is all about multiple means of expression. This is meaning how students show their learning and how teachers are assessing their learning. The idea here is to provide learners with multiple ways of demonstrating what they know. So as I mentioned, this is a simplified graphic adapted from CAST. I want to show you a screenshot of the CAST website to give you a sense of how much information is out there. You can see in this green column for engagement, there are multiple bullet points. Each of those bullet points expands to another web page. And this is only a portion of the main page that goes down lower as well. So you can see there are many, many ways that you can apply ideas to your teaching to broaden access. However, given my starting assumption that teachers are really busy and short on time, I want to focus today on high impact, low time strategies. So the bullets from CAST that are highlighted with an orange arrow right now are going to be the ones that we start focusing on. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute that give an idea about optimizing individual choice and autonomy, varying demands to optimize challenges so students stay engaged. It's not too hard that they think they'll never get there, but it's not too easy that they check out because they're bored. We'll talk about offering alternatives to visual or auditory information. And we're going to do this in the context of dragon egg rescue challenges. So in the course that I mentioned at the beginning, my college students were developing a series of workshops for their partner learners. This series of workshops has a theme about dragon egg rescues. So the students were asked to use limited household materials to design and fabricate tools to help care for dragon eggs. They had to rescue the eggs from a nest surrounded by a ring of fire, feed the dragon eggs, keep them warm, hatch them, brush their teeth, all kinds of challenges. The challenges themselves were actually adapted from college level challenges that my students had experienced in their engineering college careers, and we scaled them down to work for their 4th and 5th grade partners. These challenges all use the design, build, test, iterate cycle, which is something that engineers use all the time. But we thought it was very important to introduce this cycle to younger kids to help them think about planning in advance and using that language of testing their solution and then iterating on it, which is similar to what's happening in a math classroom, but it sounds much more empowering to say we're going to test our solution, iterate, rather than we checked it and it's wrong, try again. So that is something that you'll see throughout all of the workshops that we developed in our course. These challenges were also built to work on teamwork and collaboration, and of course, creative problem solving within constraints. I wanted to mention the quote that you see on the page and the quotes that you'll see on the coming slides. These are all real quotes with students who were doing these workshops. These are things that we wrote down or overheard. I also wanted to mention that this Dragon Egg Rescue Challenge series, it actually has the least direct math content compared to all of the workshops that we developed, but I'm focusing on it first because it is so easy to prep and so easy to modify to work for any age. The students really loved it, and it worked so well to improve their teaming skills. We could really notice a difference before and after these Dragon challenges. So I wanted to start with something very low entry that you could insert into a classroom to work on some of those social skills that will end up paying dividends in your math classroom. So let's look at that first column of UDL about multiple means of engagement. In the Dragon challenges, we started with the theme of dragons. So in the first few weeks of the semester, my students visit their classrooms to get to know their partner learners. They're overhearing jokes, they're listening of what video games they're talking about, what books are they reading, and they decided that they thought dragons would get a lot of the students interested. So that was the first step, just picking a good theme. For the challenges themselves, they wanted to have varying levels of difficulty so students could kind of pick their level of challenge, but we also wanted a variety of ways to engage these kids. So some of the challenges were really fine motor, careful concentration type challenges, and some were big gross motor physical type challenges, so students could have some choice there. We provided art supplies to help recruit the interest of students who might get a bit more excited if they could decorate the engineering tools that they were developing with their team. And we introduced a token system. We thought some students might get excited if they had a token system where my students made these little laser cut shapes that were worth different amounts of fake money. And we thought that could be a fun way to get kids excited. Secretly, we also were trying to motivate the students to really spend some time talking with their teams to plan things out before just jumping right in. And by having these options of, ooh, I've got 8 tokens, how much does it cost to buy that extra material? Or, is it worth that we splurge on those better elastics with 2 tokens? And so they have to do a little planning together. This is one of the ways we wanted that teamwork to start to emerge. It also helped our students reinforce some basic math skills as they had to really plan how many tokens they had compared to the price list for these extra materials they could buy. In addition to the starter materials, we gave each team some starter materials. The students could even practice social skills at the store, the fake store where they could go and exchange their tokens for materials. And finally, we were giving some autonomy and choice. By giving them tokens, they didn't have to spend them. They could decide when to spend them, how to spend them. So it was giving students some control over their day. We also gave students a lot of autonomy to decide which challenges to choose each day. There were multiple challenges going on. They could freely move around and decide what order to complete them, how long to spend on each one. So it was really giving students some control over how they were spending their time. Another way we tried to get at multiple means of engagement was that collaboration and community piece. So during those first couple weeks when my students were getting to know their partner learners, they noticed that teamworking skills was definitely an area for improvement for their partner learners. So they had a big goal to create challenges that would require students to work in teams. They did this in multiple ways. One way was to create physical challenges that would be impossible to do on their own. So on the left, we have 2 students who are balancing some dragon food on a string, and they're trying to drop that food into the dragon nests below. This would be impossible to do as a single person. You really needed a partner on the other side. We also tried to create some challenges that were mentally challenging, that it would probably help to have multiple minds trying to attack those challenges. Moving into that second column of UDL, that purple column with multiple means of representation, we wanted to have multiple ways to explain the situation to our students. So we started with a large group explanation, talking about the challenges, the token system, what are the goals for the day, and then we complemented that with some written graphic explanations with the same information. Ideally, these written graphics are colorful, bilingual if that's relevant for you. For us, across all of our programs, about 80% of our students have a different first language other than English. So for us, it was very important that every student in that classroom really felt that they belonged and that this engineering stuff was really meant for them. And for us, we also decided to laminate these handouts to make it easier for students to walk around to the different challenge stations and share attention with a friend holding up that laminated sheet, which we can then reuse. We also provided ongoing support to teams as they were working. The teaching staff is rotating around and helping students as needed. We also organized the room to really reinforce the tasks at hand so that students couldn't get too lost or off topic, but we did also allow students to freely choose where to work, whether that's sitting down in a quiet corner or getting your whole team together on a rug, so students did have some control over their movements. I wanted to mention that in UDL, this purple column, it's all about diversifying instructional techniques to improve learning, but I want to mention that this also can really help build the confidence of your students. When a student doesn't feel that they have to go ask for reminders because they have a written version to refer to, a graphic version to refer to, it helps them to start to feel more comfortable and that they belong there. It also fosters independence because they can move forward without waiting for the teacher to rotate around to them. And in the end, it can really save teaching time in re-explaining the rules or the steps or the directions. We've probably all had the situation that we started a math class with a lesson, handed out a worksheet for our students to work on, and the students are immediately asking questions about what we just said verbally. So the ideas here in the Dragon Challenge can be extended into the math classroom just perfectly. In a handout, we can have a written version of the key points that we've said verbally at the beginning of class. We can use graphics and colors to help keep students really focused on the steps of those problems. And this is really going to reduce the cognitive load for students. Even though you have that information available on your slides, or the students can look back at the notes they took from your presentation at the board, it's really going to reduce that cognitive load to have colorful, clear examples and instructions right there on that homework sheet or right there on that in-class assignment, so that students can really feel that they know what to do and are guided really clearly with kind of that multimedia options of which ones work best for that student. This can also save the teaching time so that your time can be spent really helping the students where they're getting stuck on the content rather than just getting them started on what the rules are or what the steps are that they need to be taking. In that final column of UDL, the blue column about multiple means of expression, this is about showing and assessing learning in multiple ways. So in this situation, we had students sketching or photographing the objects or solutions they were creating as one way to capture their learning. I do the same thing in my college math classrooms. When students are working at the whiteboards or the blackboards around my room, I'll have them take photos at the end to document that learning that happened in class that day. We also had students making videos of their iteration process and also their teaming process, how they worked with their partners. These videos really resonate well with students. It's really part of their daily lives to be watching short videos and making short videos. We wanted to tap into that interest. And this took the focus off that final product and made them really think about the importance of that iteration and the importance of working with their teammates. Finally, we did have the college students, or calling them teachers here, taking notes on the conversations they were overhearing. So the teaching role in this situation is more to sit back and observe and help as needed. And so the students could take notes and keep track of who's using what vocab, what students are really understanding, which underlying concepts we're trying to get at. So all of these examples of UDL in these Dragon challenges can translate very well into the math classroom. In fact, in the extra resources that I have for you in that resource space on the website, I have more direct translations of UDL ideas into the math classroom for things like homework, lectures, and tests. But today I wanted to show these UDL examples inside these hands-on engineering challenges because I think they're really important to integrate into the math classroom, and they really don't take much extra preparation at all. So there are lots of reasons that I think that this is important. One is that they can be used to reinforce math concepts. This particular Dragon Rescue series did not necessarily focus on math per se. There's a bit of physics involved in some of it, but you will see, use these hands-on challenges to reinforce math content. Very importantly, these challenges build teamwork and communication and social skills. And these skills are not just useful in high school or college or career. These skills are going to be useful in your classroom. If your kids know how to work together, it's going to save you teaching time so that your time can be better spent in a more targeted manner if your kids really are good at helping each other make progress. We can also practice that design, build, iterate, test cycle, which is so important just for that really empowering vocabulary to be testing something and iterating on something. That's so helpful for our math problems as well. And very importantly, these types of hands-on activities can really help students gain confidence and really start to feel a sense of belonging in STEM. I also wanted to mention, even though our school years have already begun, I want to talk about this phrase, win day one. At Olin College, we talk a lot about winning day one, which means having your first day of the semester be amazingly fun, but also in some way connected to your overall course. So it's not too late to have a day one. You can have a day one be in the middle of your semester, or you might think ahead until next January or the end of next summer. But the idea is to think about your goals for your course. What are your content goals and what are your behavioral goals? What behaviors are you hoping to see increase over the course of the semester or maybe decrease? And then you can start thinking about how you could get moving in that direction on day one or next week. It's never too late to have a fresh start. So you can think about what could we do that's really hands-on that could really get my students moving in the direction that I need them to go. These activities are also really nice to use pre or post vacation days when students might have a little bit of a harder time to focus on a regular programming that day. So in conclusion, I think these hands-on activities really can get students invested in your course, better at teaming with each other, and those dividends I really do believe will end up saving you time in the math classroom, and I know that time is really precious in the math classroom. So going back to UDL, that first column, that green column about engaging your students in multiple ways, this whole track of the conference is about differentiating instruction, and I really believe that the first step is differentiating engagement. So of course it's wonderful to teach in multiple ways and assess learning in multiple ways, but I think that that engagement is a prerequisite. Our students today, post-pandemic, just have a different relationship with learning in school than they have in the past. And so I think if we can get those students motivated and invested in their math education, it's going to be key to their success and key to your enjoyment. So I want to take a moment to consider some scholarly research on human motivation. Over the past couple decades, two psychologists, DC and Ryan, have been working to identify the necessary conditions for positive motivation and therefore learning. The first condition is autonomy. This is all about giving students age-appropriate choices and control. The second idea is competence. This is all about giving students a sense of progress towards mastery. And the third is relatedness. This is all about getting students socially invested in their collaborations. Now, these words might sound familiar, and that's because UDL overlaps incredibly well with these ideas of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. From these graphics from the CAST website, we can see autonomy is called right out on its own bullet. We have bullets that are directly related to the ideas of fostering feelings of competence in our students. And the relatedness is showing up in fostering that collaboration and community. So there's a picture of a student here who might be very excited that the research on human motivation matches so well with the ideas in universal design for learning. Or this might be a student who is very reluctant to engage in STEM and is in that photo celebrating the moment his team completed a very difficult challenge with a robot. I love that picture because of the story behind it. So I'm going to go through some examples of different hands-on activities that showcase these ideas of autonomy, competence, and relatedness in different ways. I'm going to start with a series of boat workshops. Here we had content goals around density, surface area, and buoyancy, a combination of math and science. The structure that supported autonomy for these workshops was that students were invited to rotate freely among 3 stations. This is similar to what happened with the Dragon workshops, that students had that freedom to rotate. However, here the stakes were a little higher because we did have some specific science and math content goals. So what we did is we made the hands-on activities at each station address that same content in complementary ways so that a student wouldn't be penalized in their learning if they didn't make it to one of the optional stations. Of course, however, by giving students control over their time, every single student did in fact visit every single station. There's another example of increasing motivation by increasing autonomy in the spinners workshop. This was a workshop about designing custom tops and fidget spinners. The content goals here were about angular momentum, friction, and torque. The structures that were in place to support student autonomy included giving students choices of what base materials to use, including some pre-cut shapes or not pre-cut, where students could choose their own shapes, and providing various objects to use as weights and or to increase friction or decrease friction in their spinners, and also providing optional art supplies for decorating their tops. Another autonomy supporting structure here is that students were invited to set their own goals for their tops and fidget spinners. They could decide to enter time contests to see how long their spinners would spin, or to look at color mixing challenges to see how they could color a top and then spin it to make a certain color appear while it's spinning. Changing gears a little bit, this is an example of increasing motivation by increasing feelings of competence. The context here is a hydraulic robots workshop for middle school students. Here we had content goals about converting linear motion to rotational motion using friction and center of mass. The robots were made with popsicle sticks and syringes that would be plunged with linear motion to make the robots move in a rotational way. The structure to support competence here was offering varying levels of scaffolding. For example, we provided handouts that had written words in multiple languages and photographs to show step-by-step how to build one of these robots. We complemented this with some sample physically made robots of different shapes and sizes that students could directly copy. Some students used the directions in conjunction with the sample robots. Some students didn't want anything with words on it and just preferred the challenge of looking directly at something physical and trying to copy it. But we also provide partially assembled robot components that students could modify and build from. And so the idea is students had different starting levels of where they wanted to start their build challenge, but that allowed every student to get to our end goals. And if you notice, our content goals are around motion and friction, center of mass. Our content goal isn't around building a robot. That was the means to the end. So we had to be careful when we were designing this workshop. What are our actual goals? And what we wanted is that students would be able to learn that content in a hands-on manner so that by the end of that workshop, they all got at that content goal. And most importantly, by getting to that endpoint, it helped build their STEM identity. This workshop used UDL in multiple other ways as well. One other way I wanted to mention is that it also supported their autonomy by asking students to make their own goals for their robots, whether they wanted to compete in a battle bot at the end, make a robot that could kick a small soccer ball, or swing a tennis racket at a pom-pom. And this is something I use in the math classroom all the time, asking students to make their own goals for their math work that day or that week or that semester. The final example here is about increasing motivation through relatedness. Here, this context is a middle school workshop on video game design. Our content goals were graphing and manipulating XY points, very mathematical topic, and programming in Scratch. The challenge here is that my students were met with a very rambunctious group of middle schoolers who absolutely did not want to sit down and learn to program. So my students were really challenged to step back, think about user-centered design principles, and redesign their workshop to really embrace the physicality of that middle school group. So what they did to support this idea that relatedness is so important at this age, these kids really wanted to be connecting with each other. My college students designed a team-based activity that would mimic the parts of a computer working together to play the video game called Snake. This was the game that they were originally asking the students to learn to program. But now they have this activity going on that's going to require communication between multiple parts of the computer that are being played by the humans, and movement around a life-size coordinate plane. So now they're really working together to do the math and figure out how are you adding these points together? What is a slope of a certain line going to do to your points? They're really working together in a really fun way to learn the principles. This also motivated the students enough that in the next session, they were able to successfully learn how to implement all of this in Scratch and actually program the game. So this relatedness idea is very important, especially at this middle school age where friends really are everything. And so I wanted to just talk about teamwork for a moment. Teamwork can be a really great path towards that social investment that's needed for that positive motivation to engage in their schoolwork. However, a lot of our students are very reluctant teamers. They've had bad teamwork experiences in the past. They might not want to admit they don't know things in front of their peers. They might not want their peers to copy them. There's all kinds of reasons that students don't want to work together. So I wanted to just give some tips or some ideas to think about to help teaming be more successful in your classrooms. First, I would say with reluctant teamers, to try to start with activities that truly do require collaboration. A lot of times we're tempted just to say, here's a math worksheet, work in groups. But it's not clear if that worksheet really requires the teamwork or not. So if you can start with something where they physically meet each other, that can help build up positive teaming experiences and then help that translate into other situations. I also want to mention that we talk about these 21st century skills like oral communication and teamwork, but somehow teamwork, sometimes we assume that students can just do it, that it is different than oral communication. With oral communication, we treat that as a skill that needs to be taught. We sit with students and we teach them how to create a presentation. We teach them what good graphics look like to support their oral communication. We teach them to make eye contact with the audience. But teamwork is similarly a skill that needs that much scaffolding. So I want us to think about teaming as a skill that needs to be taught explicitly. And in different classrooms, I encourage you to be very clear with yourself and very clear with your students. Are you teaching teamwork in this class? Are you just using teamwork in this class? Are you assessing the teamwork in this class? And any answer is fine, but you need to be very clear with yourself and your students, and it will have repercussions. In some of my classes, I am teaching teamwork, and others I'm just using it or using and assessing it because I know that they've learned it prior to entering that classroom. So let's talk about, if we are going to teach teamwork, what should we be thinking about? So there are many, many, many books on teamwork. People care about this in the corporate world very much, all the way down through early education. One of the tips that shows up repeatedly is starting with team bonding. The photo on this page is actually a picture of my middle school mentors who were working together on their first team bonding experience. They're out for a bubble tea there in that photo, which I love. The idea is going to change based on the age of your students. So if you have fourth graders, it might be, hey, the four of you are going to be sitting at the same table working on in-class math problems together for the next 2 weeks. But first, I want you to go pick a game and play on the rug for 15 minutes, grab an Uno or something else. And that's just a way for these students to spend some time together without having that pressure of working together on math at that first meeting. Another thing you can do is carefully define team roles and then rotate that role around different students. You can have the note taker who's keeping track of all the ideas. You can have the questioner who's required to ask a question every time someone offers ideas, or whatever would make sense in your context. You can also provide teams with communication cards. This works at all ages. They will roll their eyes at this, but they will admit later that it is actually helpful. When blank happens, I feel blank. This could be a positive emotion, a negative emotion, but it gets students really talking to each other to help improve those teaming experiences. One thing that I'll use a lot is an interruption technique in case I see a problematic dynamic. Someone's talking too much, someone isn't participating enough. You can go up to a table and say, hey, everybody pause, grab a sticky note, write the thought that's in your head and stick it right on your forehead. And again, they might roll their eyes, but this is a great way to get thoughts bubbling up from students who are feeling talked over and aren't comfortable sharing their thoughts. However you do approach teaming, the thing that I will say is that it is important to explain to your students, and it would be great if you used UDL in those explanations to do it verbally, written, graphically, to explain to them how you expect your teams to function in your class and how the outcomes of these teams, and maybe even the teaming itself, will be graded. This is going to set you and your students up for success. So in closing, I would like to share the final thought that I think some of these UDL principles and this theory of motivation, these hands-on activities really can deeply engage and excite the next generation of STEM leaders. You can work on fostering engagement by looking at how can I increase autonomy, feelings of competence, and relatedness, that community connection in your classroom. You can think about teaching teamwork and using it really deliberately. But UDL would tell us not everything should be the same. So have some days or moments that you're working in teams, some individual work, some paired partner work. Offering multiple ways to explain any concept, using a variety of assessment techniques, and fitting in some hands-on collaborative activities to really build that STEM identity. Thank you so much for being here. Please ask questions and share observations. I would love to have a conversation now. And just a final reminder to please check out the bonus materials that I have for you in the resource space. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but we're live. If anyone has any questions, I would love to chat with you. You can throw them in the chat or unmute yourselves. I've put 3 different resources directly in the chat just to make it easier for you to find. There are these slides along with some bonus slides at the end. There's a worksheet to help you think through sort of a win day one, how you might design something super fun for your first day. And then the 3rd resource I posted is just a worksheet to kind of help you think about how you might expand instruction in one of your classes. So I'd love to answer any questions or just hear your thoughts as we're all working, trying to figure out more ways to reach more students. I just saw a question about finding ideas that correlate with certain standards. And I could follow up. We don't have a ton of time. I could put some things in the chat. I will try to look. I can give you, my students actually are working on putting all of our materials online. And I was hoping that it would be ready for this talk. It isn't exactly perfectly formatted. I can show you, I'm going to put in 2 websites into the chat in just a second to help with that. And then there are so many things available, like not even that I'm related to. One more question here, are slides available? Yes, they are. And in fact, the direct link to the slides I put in the chat just above, and I believe you can access that for a certain amount of time. I'm not sure if you can download it, but you could always email me and I'm happy to email you my slides or either of the 2 worksheets that are really made for teachers. So those 2 worksheets that I sent, they're made for teachers to help you kind of think through what are your goals and how can you get to your own goals. These are adapted from things that I've done with college teachers and high school teachers as well.